Very glad to be here at Delaware State University on the riverfront. Have this owl to help us facilitate our meeting. It's pretty sweet. This is a hybrid meetings I've mentioned. We've got folks in the room, we've got folks on Zoom. We wanted to use this particular meeting as an opportunity to hear from some of our community partners about the impact of Redding supported programs and funds. I'll always get updates from our work groups. And also to discuss and vote to approve our spending plan for fiscal year 2024, which is before the legislature now. So with that, you can see our agenda. Yeah. We'll just go ahead to the next slide and talk a little bit about our meeting norms. Just as a reminder, we do have educational leaders and students from both Delaware State University and UD's Institute for Public Administration here as staff members to provide support for the Redding Consortium. Thank you. It is hybrid. We would ask you to try to remember to say your name before you speak, make it easier for folks online. And for those of you who are online, mute yourself when you're not speaking if you could. We are going to be recording this meeting so that we can check ourselves later. And for those of you who are online, could you please type your name in the chat so we can make sure we know who's here for roll calls. Okay, norms are done. I think we go on to the next. You should have received the meeting minutes in your email, and I would be happy to entertain a motion if you feel familiar enough and comfortable enough with those minutes. A motion to approve those minutes from our February 22nd meeting.
So moved.
This is Tika, second.
All right. Oh, way to remember those norms, Tika. Thank you. Kevin Kelly made a motion. Tika seconded. And I think we're going to go ahead and do a whole roll call. Is that correct?
All in favor.
Okay, all voting members in favor. If you could just give a show of hands. Any Redding Consortium members online, if you could type yay in the chat box, we will count your votes as well. That looks pretty unanimous here in the room, and we'll make sure to count folks online as well. Matt, I'm going to pass it over to you for the next slide.
Oh, okay. Well, good evening, everybody. You may remember at our last meeting, one of the things that we talked about was the importance of trying to get out to some of the schools to talk to teachers and parents and staff people at the school level about specifically about the after school, outside school time component of our spending plan, but also just more generally about how things were going and issues that we ought to be aware of. So we sent out emails. Elena, thank you for doing this, sent out emails to all of the schools in Newcastle County that were eligible to receive our outside school time grants, which is a limited group. That's just schools with elementary school age students that are above a certain threshold in terms of coming from households below the poverty line. I think in the future we'd like to expand that universe to include middle schools and high schools as well, but it was a good group to start with. So we invited people to invite us, and 4 schools have invited us so far. And we're hoping that, as we roll over into the next school year, that we'll be invited by more. All the consortium members should have received invitations to join us. And there's one coming up at Eastside on the 12th. The other 3 happened already, which were at Boomba, Harlan, and Eisenberg. I thought they were great. Senator Lockman and I were both there. We had good mixes of parents, teachers, staff people at all 3 schools, and I thought they were incredibly helpful. Number one, just as sort of a fact check for us in terms of what we're doing and making sure that we're talking about the right things, but also, some of you work in schools all day, so this already, and others of us don't. But it was just really refreshing and encouraging to actually get to talk to some of the folks for these kids every day and just see the level of dedication and commitment and excellence that is going on at the school level. And that was true at all 3 schools that we went to, and it was just it was really encouraging to see. Again, not surprising in theory, but to actually see the folks and hear them talk about what they do and how much they are committed to it was great. So I'll let Senator Lockman, give any thoughts that she had. I think then in terms of the specifics that we're working on, the biggest takeaway that I got, and this was especially true from Eisenberg, where we actually had a chance to talk to the teachers there who run their after school program, which is very ambitious in that they've really well put together in terms of cobbling together lots of different smaller grants to put together something. I think that we are on the right track in terms of what our outside school time program is focused on and what the RFP is focused on. And mostly what we heard from them was that they would like to have a more robust program if they had the funds to do it, that they would like to have different things for the kids to be doing after school, just a more, diversities of opportunities for them. And the other thing that we heard, programmatically for us, I think was, in terms of professional development, we heard from teachers at, I think, a couple of the schools that we went to, that they would like to have more of a direct voice in terms of the subject matter of the professional development that they receive, and that, that there was, sometimes a gap between what was mandated and what they actually would find helpful in terms of doing their jobs better, and they would like to have a process set up where they could, have some input into that. So in terms of what we do, happily for us, we're still kind of in the formative stages of the details of what we would be doing. But I think that was a message that we got, was that, they would like to have some say in that. And then outside of our programs, I think the big message we got is that from all three schools that
No, I can watch it here.
Some of which they attribute to kids having been out of school for such an extended period of time. Just a lot of challenges at the school level in terms of helping kids dealing with things that are happening outside of school, and I think are feeling like they don't have enough hands in the school building to deal with all of the challenges that they have coming up, and that they could use some help in terms of people in the school that were able to help them, help kids who were coming to school with problems that they just didn't feel that they had the staffing, or in some cases expertise to deal with. But I thought it was really useful overall, and like I said, I think we're going to try to do more of it next year when people are back in school again. And I would encourage you, if you if you have time, to join us. Senator, I don't know if you want.
No, Matt, you covered it, I think, very, very well. It has been really refreshing, and I'm really looking forward to doing more. And like you said, I think, the schools that we've been in so far had reasonably comparable populations, but all very different dynamics as schools. So that was really interesting to see how those dynamics differed. And, but the fact that there were still some very common themes, I think, in terms of challenges that folks were facing, and even some common themes on different sides of the coin around challenges too, just whether or not, certainly educators wanting to be empowered to do some of this work, or just seeing it done in ways that didn't bog them down, and all these kinds of things. So nothing that would probably be shocking to those of you who are practitioners in the space, but what it's like to actually go and have that reaffirmed when you've been lost in the weeds of policymaking is great. And so again, just it's been wonderful to do that, and I look forward to doing more, and hope that anyone who is interested will come with us or host us at yours. All right, it's back to me.
Oh,
Maybe.
So we also, the other thing that we had mentioned at the last meeting that we wanted to try to do was to have some of the folks who had actually been participating in some of the programs that have now been up and running, come in and talk to us about their experience with it and how it's going. And we have questions for them.
Yes, so yeah, we thought it'd be nice to really ground our meeting in having some of our community partners here. So just as we've been going out into buildings, sort of bringing folks from buildings in to talk about the impact of the programs and funds we've brought forward. And thank you to the staff for putting the questions. We are hoping folks will answer for us. I think each of you have 5 minutes, which never enough, but we really just want to get a taste and feel so that we can have follow-up questions. I'm going to start us off with Mr. Roberts. So we have Keith Roberts, he's an educator at Eastside Charter, and he's here to talk to us about the impact that he's experienced of our Redding Consortium School Support Scholarship for you as a teacher. So, Mr. Roberts, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Hello, I'm Mr. Roberts. I work at Eastside Charter School. I'm an educator at Eastside Charter School. I'm going back for my bachelor's in education. One of the things I tried to take this opportunity to do was not only go back for myself, but to show the kids that it's never too late for you to learn, to get your education. It's never too late. I should have went straight out of high school, didn't, but this was the opportunity that I just felt I could not take advantage of. Mr. Bass was very supportive. We had a bunch of other staff members who made sure, helped me fill out the paperwork and everything to get involved into the program. If they did not stay on me, don't know if I would have made it cut, just made it in time. So I got in, I'm learning a lot of things that I actually have brought a lot back to the school and made the school a lot easier. I'm a substitute, so I don't move like an average substitute. I'm not gonna come in, play a movie, sit there and do nothing. You're gonna do some work, you're gonna learn. Not gonna relate to the kids when it comes to that. I know as children, when you get older, you kind of lose that aspect of how difficult school can be. And I think going back to college, it kind of brought me back and grounded me and let me know, hey, this is not easy for them. So that helped a lot, and it helped me be able to explain things to them and make it easier for them in the class and make that easier.
Thank you so much. That's really exciting. I wanted to, in the couple of minutes we have, as long as none of the staff gives me a stink eye. Okay, I wanted to see if anyone had any questions for you about, your path to the scholarship or maybe even your plans from here. I didn't see the questions, but do any of us have follow-up questions?
Can I ask what school are you attending?
I currently go to Del Tech.
Okay.
So I enrolled in Del Tech. We had multiple options. Del Tech just happened to be more convenient, so I went to Del Tech.
And you're pursuing your bachelor's in
Yes,
early?
bachelor's in education.
Okay.
So I believe it's science.
Okay. Great.
Thank you.
Great question. Any other follow-up questions for folks? So, is that a hand? I do. I'm just yielding to others first. But so is your intention to stay with Eastside to become an
Yes,
educator?
yes, I don't.
Okay, sorry, not to put you in an awkward position with your boss, but,
And his former principal.
oh, really?
Mentor was his former principal.
Oh, really?
Down Keith's name, call him.
Uh-oh, well, you heard it here first.
Oh, yeah. As you heard on record, he said Eastside.
Let the bargaining begin. Who's that, Keith? Thank you so much. I'm really happy that you've been able to take advantage of the scholarship and very excited that you're an educator in our schools and we'll be able to continue to say that. Sure. Okay, cool. Next, we are going to hear from Lucinda Ross, who is the executive director, as I think many of us know, of St. Michael's School and Nursery, and you're going to talk about St. Michael's and the experience of a full day pre-K.
Unless we can talk substitute.
Uh-oh. Bidding more.
Thank you very much for inviting me here. Last year, we had 45 Reading preschool slots. 180 days a year for 6 hours a day. So I've often said that as the pandemic recovery continues in so many ways, these funds stop the bleed, and gave us a little bit of joy that maybe we've been missing out, but struggling for the last 3 years. We did lots of enrichment in our programs. If you've not been to St. Michael's, you might not know what an incredible outside space we have in the middle of the city. So we now have an outdoor classroom. We have a teacher who teaches 4 mornings a week, major studies, outdoor studies. We've taken advantage of UD's outdoor learning program. We're actually a certified outdoor learning site. If you guys can find it. We've done that, and with the second thing that we've done really with these monies in particular is we've started a kindergarten camp. So it really occurred to me last year when we were thinking about our children going on to kindergarten, that they were coming out of small groups. They were sometimes they were in those groups from the time they were 8 weeks old, moving on to kindergarten, and what was that transition going to look like? So instead of, thinking about being in a group of maybe 15 children with 2 teachers and going into a classroom of 25, 30 children with 1 teacher, what we've done starting the week after July 4th is we put them all together. They're in our library. They learn how to say the Pledge of Allegiance. They do a schedule that's similar to kindergarten. We're just kind of getting them ready for those other routines that school comes out. We have 4 different bus trips that we do during the summer. Last year they went to Hagley. They did a route around the city to the different schools and saw those. This year, rather, we're going up to the DuPont Environmental Center because we've been working with them a lot in the background. So that is a lot of what, we did with the Redding money. The other thing we did was really supporting and developing and training our staff. We're in such a crisis, as you know, Maria and everyone. So we're doing 2 things. We're looking at retention of our staff. We have a quarterly bonus that we give based on attendance, paperwork done on time, call outs, all of those, but it just kind of reinforcing the idea that we need you, we want you, and we value you. We are growing our own. We recently invited 5 or accepted 5 young folks, actually one of them's not so young, into the profession, and they're in the CDA cohorts. We're supporting them on that and doing lots of work with our folks and our staff. So it's been, I can give you all sorts of numbers. We continued our COVID pay to December of 22. We were closed from March 13th, 2020 until July 3rd, I think it was, in 2020. And between that time and this past December, we had 65 quarantines. So our folks were in the midst of it, and we supported them through all that. We paid them through any quarantine. We paid them if they had to leave because their child was quarantined. So we have really been very earnest at building our staff and building a family feeling, our community feeling. And in a profession that has a turnover rate of about 45% yearly, we're maintaining at about 63%. And that is pretty good. So that's me bragging. Now, here's the bad news. We're struggling with what's going to happen this next year. As we understand it, and these are not final numbers, but as we understand it, the Redding slots will be folded into ECAP. It would be less than it was last year. And the grading that we were able to do with POC is being cut off. We're told you either take ECAP or Redding, or you take POC. And that's a big hit. I don't, these were things that we heard last week. We haven't seen the contract or final numbers. But I'm really concerned. We had this great year and I hate to see it come to a final. So sorry. I don't mean to be Debbie Downer here, but I'm concerned. And it is a big concern. I don't know of an issue that approaches equity in as many places as this does. It's classist, it's sexist, it's racist, and anytime we have to put the brakes on all the good stuff that is going on. It concerns me.
Thank you. And I really appreciate, what you've been able to do so much in alignment with the vision for the pre-K seats in terms of elevating quality and really, elevating your workforce is right in line. And it's helpful to us. We wouldn't have centered an investment in pre-K if we didn't know it was vital to the overall goal of educational equity. And so hearing about the challenges that are ongoing in the very complex space of early childhood education funding is, nothing to apologize for. That's what we're here to hear and understand so we can continue to advocate for improvements. But does anyone else have a follow-up question for Lucinda? Matt, you look like you have something to say?
I do. I'm concerned about the last thing that Lucinda said, and I can't see on the screen if there's anyone from DOE
Great.
here, but certainly the intent, to have a pre-K end up worse off than it was before is the opposite of what the intent of doing this was. So if there's something going on at DOE that is counter to what this is supposed to be, I would like to understand it.
Yeah, me too. We're going backwards. I like to understand it too.
But again, I don't know if there's, I don't know if there's someone from DOE who's on or not.
Yeah, if there is someone from DOE with knowledge of the matter who would like to raise their hand, we would all, I think, love to hear from you. And if not tonight, if that doesn't come to fruition, I'm sure that's something we can work on. For a subsequent.
Well, how can someone not from the Department of Education be in this meeting?
Hi,
Oh,
I'm here. Cora Scott.
Cora Scott. Hi, Cora.
Hi, how are you? Can you hear me?
Yes, I know you're a bit familiar with this situation.
Yeah, so I don't actually though have a lot of details around the specifics of what was shared, but I'm happy to follow up and get some more information. I know Caitlin and our team have been working to kind of work through some of the logistics of the RFP that was put out, but we can definitely follow up and see kind of where things stand and, you know, make sure that communication is clear and accurate.
Thank you, Cora.
Which communication is clear and accurate?
Follow-up question, Maria?
Which communication is clear and accurate?
Just saying right now, I don't have any information or communication to share, so I just want to make sure that we get the right information before we speak on the current situation that was just shared related to St. Michael's.
So from the department on the matter. Okay, I think she means.
What, we had a meeting because we did put in for the RFP, we put in for the early, well, it's not early head start, it's early ECAP slots as well as additional Redding. And we were given what we thought were, you know, the proposed rates. But with the understanding that they were going to go back because there was several of us, especially the downtown nonprofits, who got together and had a meeting and just said, you know, it's not gonna work, folks. It's so, and with the understanding with Caitlin and John said that they would get back to us. But the contracts for that RFP, the, you know, PLC rates haven't gone out. You know, we're sitting here looking at a fiscal year that starts on July 1st, and we still don't know what the rates for PLC are.
Right.
You know, and
Okay.
one of the options, when I met my senior staff, one of the option is do not accept Redding or ECAP.
Yeah.
It's not, if it's not valued, I mean, it's not valuable. If you're gonna have to take
Take away.
quality down, you're gonna have to, it's just, it's not gonna work.
Well, right, and that's the exact opposite of the intention. It's meant to be additive to provide, you know, additional opportunities for higher quality and workforce
But
development.
work it.
Well, I think there is some urgency to getting an answer to this, because if there's something, I don't understand how purchase of care works. But, you know, if there's something that needs to be fixed in terms of state budget, so that this is not happening, there's 20 something. Best case.
Less,
So, yeah,
really, but
yeah.
potentially.
very
Right.
few days left in which to do that. And I would hope that that would happen if there's some unintentional problem being created here. So I guess my hope would be that we could figure out what the problem is, and if there's some kind of you know, something that has to be done with the state budget in order to address it, that it can be figured out and done before the budget gets passed.
Kevin?
This is Kevin, I had a meeting with a friend of mine as a daycare up on Market Street, and I think the whole issue of cap and purchase of care and the Redding is very concerning to individuals who are in that space. You know, they don't understand really what is going to happen or what is happening, you know, to the rates and so forth. Now, JSC's met, they did their budget and so forth, but I think it would be helpful, not to belabor the point, for us to have some type of paper that shows currently what's going on and what is going to happen, what are the proposals that's going to change the way people go. My friends seem to think, you know, whether he's going to be able to do ECAP or POC, he's kind of caught in the middle, and kind of, to be honest with you, doesn't understand it. You know, here's a person that, hey, their job is to take care of young people. They come in, they don't make enough money from it, and they're still struggling to try and figure out this issue. So I would just say anything that we can do to make it better, especially for this group here, to understand and convey would be helpful.
You know, well, one of the things that happened, Kelly. Kevin.
You call me Kelly.
Kelly.
Call me anything you want, Maria.
The issue is, Lucinda, correct me if I'm wrong. We have childcare from 6:45 in the morning to 5:30 in the evening. Reading is part of that.
Mhm.
The parents can't work part-time,
Mhm.
they need full care. So we either provide full care up to Reading, which is the money that you give us, and send the kids home to who, I don't know, the parents are working, or we give it free
Mhm.
for the rest of the 4 hours. It's that simple. It's that simple.
Right, so I think to Lucinda's point, there was an opportunity before to, like, the word you used was braid.
Right.
Different funding streams together in order to
Wrap
do
around.
exactly what you described, and there have been some reforms and changes in that space that have affected that, but it sounds like something that we can work with our staff and the department to maybe make sure that we can explain clearly so that we all understand what's actually going on, because it is a really, I know there are a few people in here who can explain purchase of care. I'm looking at Madeline, but not all of us can, so it might be helpful for us to maybe do a little memo to make sure that we are all on the same page and understand what's changing and what impacts you all are experiencing.
And Tizzy, just to add to the conversation about, so there are 5 downtown nonprofits. It's LACC and Christina Cultural Arts and St. Michael's and Kingswood and local Head Start as well. And if we don't, if we go with Reading, we don't take PLC, we miss the last year of the tiered reimbursement funds, which is a big hit for us. If we take the Reading and not the PLC, then our folks will not get hit with co-pays, which it looks like all of our families are gonna get hit with co-pays again in August. So it's really, it's a tug of war for us in many, many ways.
But the thing that we have to remember is that you're gonna get these kids in your school. And if they don't have a fighting chance, because they're poor. When you're poor, you're poor. I don't know if anybody's been poor in this place, but I was poor. I mean, poor, when you don't have anything to eat. That's how poor I was. I didn't have books. I didn't have Christmases. I didn't have crayons. The same with these poor kids. And this is what this is about. And we're going backwards. Why? Because it's for brown and black and brown kids. Too much money, can't spend too much money on them.
Yeah.
So we're gonna sit around and let it go backwards again? No say.
Well, I definitely don't want to curtail the conversation, but it seems like it's one that we are not going to stop having right now. And I just want to thank you again, Lucinda, for bringing it up. And again, just to thank you for really stepping up to the spirit of the Reading ECAP seats in the work that you've done, and, really giving us a great example of how the model can work, and we hope will continue to work.
I got one more thing to say.
Yes, ma'am.
The quality.
Yes.
So tier reimbursement, out the door. What did I use tier reimbursement for? Teacher professional development. Instead of having 24 kids in a room with 2 teachers, I have 3 teachers. So it's not like I took the money and I put it in the bank to make more money. No, I literally improved quality. Curriculum, testing, scholarships. That's what I use the tier reimbursement for. That's also going gone.
Yeah.
We don't need quality anymore.
Well, rest assured, this is to be continued. We're gonna keep talking about this and digging into it, and I got a thumbs up on the memo thing. Hailing. So finally, we have, oh, wrong page. We have, do we have Dan Shelton online?
No,
we don't. Oh, we don't. Okay, we don't have him at all. But we do have Crystal Greenfield, and followed up for the Director of Teacher and Learning to talk about wraparound services that have been provided at Bancroft. So we're happy to have you. I was gonna say, we have an awful lot of people, so having just the 2 of you.
It's great for us
Improvement,
to
don't
be
tell
here
Dan.
this evening. Thank you for the support that you provide to the work that we do every day. So the wraparound services for us have provided 2 partners for us. One extends the day and extends the year, and that's the United Way of Delaware. And their work has been to enrich and provide tutoring and support to our students outside the workday. The second is through the Life Health Center. The Life Health Center, of course, is the preventative side of both mental and physical health. They've become invaluable partners to us in the work that we do every day. And I think the best voice for you to hear from that is Ms. Greenfield, principal extraordinaire, who leads the Bancroft School for us and can talk more specifically about the work. But we do look at the work each month. We gather data each month from several data points, how many students are served, how many families are served, how many do we have as a possibility, how many have registered for the Life Health Center. So we continue to track that data, we continue to pay attention to that data to ensure that your monies are well spent. So with that, Ms. Greenfield.
So, good evening, everyone. My name is Crystal Greenfield. Excuse me. I'm really excited to talk about the Wellness Center because when our school became a 1st through 8th grade school, the first thing teachers and families said was, we need a wellness center to be able to provide mental health services to our students and our families. But we took it a step further and asked for that wellness center to also have medical services provided. So we felt that it was really important for our families and our students to be able to come to school and see a nurse practitioner or a registered nurse or a licensed practical nurse, you know, a medical person to be able to maybe do different testing and immunizations. That was huge. Right, we don't want to send people away. We want to say, go around the corner. So our wellness center, this year we've been focusing with them on social emotional learning. They push into our classrooms and they provide preventive support to our students. That has been huge for us this year. We really love the fact that they're able to get in and do social emotional learning activities and workshops with our students. Right now, we have 376 out of roughly 540 students registered and consented with the Wellness Center. Only 22 receive individual counseling. However, 190 students have participated in the medical, like immunizations and things like that in COVID testing. But all of our students have, as our wellness center, pushed into the classrooms. So they have access to someone to do preventive activities with them. They talk about friendship and kindness, and obviously it's 1st grade is just a little different than 8th grade. Just a little bit. So it really helps us to be able to kind of head things off before they get started. And really do a lot of restorative exercises with our students. So we use the Wellness Center to also partner with our school counselors and our social workers and different staff members in the building as well. 21st Century, as Mr. Dunford stated, really helps us to extend our day and extend our school year. One of the things that we really need support with is recruitment of staff so that we could serve as many students as needed. And Maria was kind of speaking to this, and I've heard it made mention, we have a lot of students who have learning loss from the pandemic. And this year is the first year we've had the highest number of students register in our school in 1st grade who have never been to school before. So I have 3 8-year-old 1st graders. And what will we do with them? You know, what we're going to do is we test them and we assess them and see what their reading levels are, because we have some who learned a lot at home. But then we try to catch them up by allowing them to, encouraging their families to bring them into the 21st Century after school program. So it has really, it's been, the Redding Consortium funding has supported us and our families tremendously.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Any questions? Chuck, did you want to add anything?
Just to say what I'm sure Dan would say if he were here, just definitely thank you to the Redding Consortium and the state of Delaware for funding. We had we had 3 sites funded this year. We had Bancroft, Bayard, and Stubbs funded this year. Ongoing funding for Bancroft is going to be provided. So, you know, we'll make the best of that and continue to do good things with that funding. So thank you, everybody.
Yes, Kevin?
This is Kevin speaking again. Speaking of Bayard, so Pulaski is transitioning. Bayard will be back open next year, correct?
Right. Right.
So do any of the students from Bancroft who were the 7th and 8th graders were in the pile? Where were the 7th and 8th graders that were in Bayard till that this year?
I'm at Bancroft,
Right,
so we're 1st through 8th grade, so we service our 7th and 8th graders at Bancroft.
Okay.
The students at Pile, the 7th and 8th graders who are currently at Pile, the 8th graders are going to be going on to high school in Newark, and then the 7th graders will just transition to 8th grade in their new building.
oh, you're, okay, so I should.
They're in the pile building.
Correct, there's someone, I was just trying to make sure that Bayard next year it'll be K through 8 again.
One
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 through
through,
one
yeah.
through 8. And there'll be a wellness center there.
Yes, we established one through the first year of the grant.
Correct,
They
okay,
didn't receive the second year of the grant. We're gonna have to figure that out internally. We're talking about that. We're gonna have 4 schools in the city next year. Pulaski Early Childhood, which we're opening up. Bayard, Bancroft, and Stubbs.
gotcha.
And so, the Bancroft has the grant, the other 3 don't. Like I said, we're discussing that, but we're gonna make sure they have something. So, we'll work that out.
So what's the challenge with getting the additional grant funding for Bayard for the wellness center?
We're still talking with our vendors to understand what it all costs. Obviously, when you have a grant, you can afford to do so much.
Right,
When you don't have a grant, you have to take a look at, okay, what am I gonna be able to provide within what I have? So, you know, I don't really have much more detail than that. That's other than we're talking about what we're gonna do, because you can't provide something for a year and see successes and say, okay, well, just because we don't have grant funding, it's gone. We gotta figure it out. So we're working on that.
do the vendors build Medicaid for Medicaid services for children within the school?
They are supposed to be. That's another thing we have to go back and look at to see how that offsets the cost.
And they're collecting that revenue from the billing, correct?
They're from the billing,
Yes.
yes. they
So
should.
that's got to play into it, because their incentive is to bill Medicaid for appropriate
Right,
services. for
and that should offset the medical side, but it's the wraparound side
Correct,
that we really want on top of the medical. And so that's the part that,
it's also.
that's where the grant is most helpful and continues to be for Bangkok, is the wraparound side.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Anyone have any other questions or comments? Oh, yeah.
When y'all say the restaurant side, what do you mean?
Okay.
Because the Medicaid, like the behavioral mental health part, also should be billed to Medicaid as well.
And that's Xavier emails for people online.
Like what additional services for the wraparound?
Yeah, I don't know the level of detail of what they bill for, what they don't. That's part of us trying to assess what the cost is gonna be. But I don't know if you guys know more about, but I mean, there's some stuff that's obviously medical, and then wraparound is things like additional social work and mental health, but I don't know.
I know that they are able to bill for any families that join. So that's the partnership that we've had with them, is to find ways to have more families join, so that more families can get the full service. In order for students to get the services at school, they don't have to be part of Lighthouse Center.
Part of the magic of the grant is that we're in the education business. We're not in the medical business. And we're not supposed to be in all that other business, but we find ourselves in that business just by the nature of our kids, our families, our community. So we would like to outsource that stuff and not have to think about it the best we can. That's why we bring these vendors in. So that's why I don't have that depth of knowledge that probably you're looking for on that, but we gotta figure it out.
And to clarify now, for me, we use it for everything, right? And, I'm not thinking about, you do this thing and you're getting billed for it. As a building leader, I'm not thinking that. I just know a kid needs help or a family needs support. So now, I really should just be talking about the wraparound, but we use them for other things, obviously, because of, the contract we have with them.
And before we move on, if you talked about having successes, this is the first time there was a wellness center? Is this the first year?
No, this is
This
the
is ongoing.
second or
Second
third?
or third year?
Second,
Second.
Okay, but it's enabling.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
And I know, when we've talked, like we visited Eisenberg, which I think had the first elementary level wellness center. And one of the things we talked about was how do we know that it's working? And we talked about the ways that was measured, like looking at referrals going down and things like that. Are you tracking or seeing anything like that?
Let me share. So we look at the total school enrollment, then we look at the enrollment of students and families in the school-based health center.
Mhm.
Then we look at the number of students that are seen in the school-based health center each month. Then we look at the amount of funds that are obligated by the health center, so we're watching our funds as they go to see a pattern. We're looking at enrollment of students that are involved in outside school time services, the average daily attendance in outside school time services, the amount of funds that are obligated for the outside school time services, and then the amount of funds that are remaining that are unobligated to either program. So
Okay.
that's how we track monthly.
Okay.
And Dr. Gina Moody gathers that information from each one of the sites, puts that to our fingertips so that we all know exactly where we are on each of those things.
So attendance, not necessarily disciplinary referrals and seeing any impact in that space.
So that is data that we look at through our school leadership plan.
Okay,
And so we do look at that.
Okay.
We do gather that. What we haven't done is separated it out to say they're in the school-based health program and this is happening.
got it.
But we do look at students that are in the after-school program and how does that work? For summer, one of the metrics that we look at is how are students doing at the beginning of summer? How do they do at the end of the summer? And then how do they do into the school year?
Mhm.
So that we see what the impact is, whether it's disciplinary referrals, whether it's an increased academic, whether it's an increased engagement from the family.
Mhm.
Those are things that we hope to be able to gather as we look after the summer program. And by tagging our summer kids, we're able to see that in a way that we haven't done in the past. So that's a new way for us, but the state has really encouraged us to look at our summer programs and think about what are the ways we measure, because it's not typical for a child to have 20 days in the summer and become from a C to an A student. It just doesn't work that way. But there are things we can look at as far as engagement, as far as the family engagement, as far as that student, how are they doing on the metrics that we use to measure academics? So we're pretty excited for that change, and we're going to get more for you.
Oh, that's wonderful. I think we had a raised hand momentarily. I don't know if that was Bettina. Did you have something you wanted to add to that before we move on? Sounds like no. Well, thank you.
No, I'm okay. I'm okay. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks so much to all of our community partners for being here and talking about the experiences that you've had and the work that you are doing, and will continue to do. So we look forward to more updates, and more positive outcomes in the future. Thanks. And I think we are moving now into our work group updates, and we're going to start with the settlement work group. Aaron, Chuck.
Good evening. Excited to be here on today. The settlement committee has focused on the settlement agreement between the Department of Education, so the governor's office, as well as with the NAACP. And we are excited to say that the years of settlement have actually progressed through. So our team has given feedback, has focused on different policies that were either connected directly to the settlement or ancillary pieces. And Chuck and I have worked with an incredible group. And so shout out to Shelly and Tika, who are part of our committee, and Alina, who are part of our committee, who are here. I'm not sure if anybody else online did reach out to our committee before, and we are now at the point of saying we've done our work. So we are now closing this chapter of the settlement committee, and definitely appreciation to Haley and to Kelly for all that they've done supporting us these many years of the settlement. With that, we look forward to continuing to advocate for children everywhere in the state of Delaware, and looking at some incredible work in the future.
For you guys, and Kelly and Haley, and Chuck, did you want to add anything as the co-chair of the work group?
Whatever you say. Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for your support. And again, thanking the state for getting all this stuff in the budget. You know, we've met what's in the settlement. We've exceeded the timeline in some cases. That's a good thing. Still more work to be done in general, but not necessarily directly related to the settlement. Early childhood is a big thing. We're gonna keep our eye on stuff.
Yeah.
From over here. If we see any red flags, we'll bring it back.
Okay, perfect. I just, I'm really thankful to your whole group, which was a very dynamic group. You guys sprung into action. And I think really helped to spotlight things and help keep us, educated on what the settlement said and opportunities for action, and really appreciate you as a work group, because I think when we started the Redding Consortium, we said we're going to start work groups that are action oriented, and we're going to do things, meet goals, and then move on. So you guys have just been like a paragon of that, and just very, very thankful to you for that. Matt, anything? Matt has nothing. Never mind, sorry.
I have a question.
Yes. ma'am.
How does the proposed mixing of ECAP and Reading impact the settlement?
This mixing these things is a great question for Tizzy and for Matt, and looking at what CORE's respond to. This is new information for us,
Yeah.
along with everyone here. So we actually had not had that a part of what we're doing. The ECAP funding is what we were focusing on, but
Yeah.
this is definitely a huge blow. I look forward to DOE's response.
I look forward to that as well, and thank you for voicing that. I think we'll add that to our list of questions for any memo, and we'll come back with answers.
Okay.
We do not have them right now, Maria,
Write
but
my
thank you.
question down so I won't forget. it.
Write it down, text it to me.
Text yourself.
Text yourself, text me. And we will,
It's still in compliance. Technically,
oh, us, yeah,
technically, the money's there,
Mhm.
but now we're talking about implementation questions.
that's an
That's a
excellent
new
question.
thing.
Are you reforming the group right now? Is what-
Maria, take, I would love us, Maria.
No. Maybe there's an opportunity for a new work group. I don't know. This is how we roll. Talk about that next time. Great. Thank you guys again so much. Oh, there's a raised hand. Director Cade.
Hey, how you doing? Saran Cade, Office of Management and Budget. I was curious as to whether or not the list of deliverables that correspond with, for example, teacher recruitment and retention. Are those lists things that were kind of etched in stone as things that we had to do to address recruitment or retention, or is it a breathing document to where if other initiatives have been undertaken, would those be added to this list, or are we just focused on the deliverables that we have here? So, for example, the Public Education Compensation Commission has been meeting to offer recommendations related to, increasing wages for educators to improve recruitment and retention efforts. And so would something like that be added, or are we solely focused on the $4 million recruitment and retention initiative that was laid out here?
I'm happy to look to Aaron to talk about how you approach the work there.
The settlement committee was 100% focused on what were the deliverables in the lawsuit settlement. And there were some other pieces that added on outside of this. And so definitely the work you just mentioned was outside of the work of teacher recruitment for retention, the funding assessment, et cetera. Those are also pieces that are outside of this.
Sure.
So we were looking directly at were these pieces hit.
Right.
Got it.
We
Gotcha.
did
Okay.
the settlement as a floor, not a ceiling, though. So I think to your point, Director Cade, like those are some examples of things that we could point to the list as where we've gone above the floor.
Correct. Thanks. Great work, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that, we are going to turn to our Shelley Rouser to talk to us about some updates coming from the educator work group.
Good evening, everyone. Shelley Rouser, Delaware State University. Aaron, before I jump in, I think you recruited me to the settlement committee the hour after the educator group signed their recommendation. So if you want to get back into a committee and help us out with that, I can talk to you after the meeting.
I think most of us have.
The hour after the meeting, and after our recommendations went there. Shelley Rouser, Delaware State University, and I was on the committee for the educator work group, and I'm presenting on behalf of Representative Mike Smith and Noel Takara, who were the co-chairs. So The educator work group, if you're not familiar with the work, because the recommendations from the educator group came out really first, right after the first work group that issued their recommendations. And so, yes, Dr. Woods, you were on that committee with me, I believe, yes. And so the work falls into two buckets. There's many recommendations, and you can look at the report on our website to learn more about that. But essentially, the recommendations, the funding that is supporting those recommendations falls under two buckets. One that's working on scholarships, another that I'll talk to in a little bit focused on professional development. So I'll start with talking about the scholarships, and then I'll be fast if there's time for any questions. So the higher education office last year, we had a kind of speedy initiative. We knew that there are tremendous needs in schools. And so we had a speedy initiative to put out there something that could be, that low hanging, quick impact for the field. It's mostly focused on retention, to be able to keep people in the field and support their professional development and educational endeavors, and to get them into the field, quite frankly. So there were 70 individuals that received scholarship in amounting to 185K. We put that initiative in place last fall, and it was able to support educators in the fall, winter, and spring with scholarships. There were targeted communications that went out, and what you'll learn about that we have in place for the 23-24 school year is really just scaling that up and being more purposeful with how we go about that. It was successful, and now it's about how do we be more deliberate. So the committee met and said, how do we take something that was a quick initiative, rolled out and impacted 70 educators, and figure out how we can be proactive, get the word out to educators so that they can do more than just get relief for those people who were pursuing degrees, and it just supported them to not have that financial hit. Imagine the impact that we'll have when people will actually know that this is more ongoing, because that was the biggest question coming from the field. Is this one time or is it ongoing? I don't know that I'm going to start a degree with something that I don't know is going to be continuous. So our goal with this was to have something that's continuous. Next slide. Oh, maybe this is the slide. Thank you. So eligible employees and student teachers who are currently working in Redding schools are eligible. And those who are actively planning to enroll in summer, fall, winter, or spring can apply. We have a flyer that's amongst your materials here, this beautiful flyer. The Office of Higher Education has been very responsive with us in flipping around our ideas for scaling this up and turning this around in record speed to be able to have something that we can begin communicating to teachers. Our goal was to make sure that we were able to get this out before teachers are going into summer. And so they can be thinking about any educational pursuits for fall. Let me see, anything else here? And you can see the eligible employees. This looks much like the same group that we were targeting last year. Next slide. And so the span of who can apply, you can see, is purposely broad. We have associates, bachelor's, master's, and those who are seeking certificates and advanced credentials. Anything we can do to get people into the field, a major goal of that work group's work, and anything we can do to keep teachers in our schools in Wilmington, which we know that part of why this group was so important is the retention. So there's no minimum number of credits that they can pursue. If they want to just inch their way into the profession, the scholarships allow them to do that. And if they want to go full-fledged in, the scholarship allows for that too. I don't know if there's a maximum. I'll have to look that up on here. And you can see the eligible programs, everything from ARTC to bachelor's in education, master's level that can help to retain people in our schools. And then those educators that are surrounding those teachers, those very important support roles are included as well. And so we will be issuing some deadlines. This information is on the website already, and we will be engaging in the very important part of communications. June 5th, application open, and it will close on August. And that will allow people to apply this summer for both summer coursework and also for the fall of 2023. There will be other announcements that come probably toward the fall for applications for winter and spring. So there will be also some information sessions that'll be held, just like we did last year, that will help get the word out there. So with that, I'll take any questions that you might have.
Anybody have any questions for Shelley?
I got it.
Oh, and by the way, we doubled the budget. The budget is $370 for now. So should I pause for questions here on scholarship before I think there's a couple slides on PD?
Oh, are there? Okay,
Yeah.
great.
I'll pause for
Questions on the
questions.
scholarship?
Yeah.
Thank you, Kevin. I know Kevin has.
Did you?
I know what she's doing.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, we'll keep.
I'll ask.
Oh, okay, go ahead, Secretary.
So I just did some simple math. It looks like it's around $2,500 on average.
Mhm.
Is it, are there other professional reimbursement that these teachers are eligible for beyond that? Just through their school districts or through other?
Depending on your school district, I know that there can be various levels of reimbursement that come from a school district, but that varies greatly. And certainly it varies with charters and public, and it even in districts, and it varies within districts as well. Both in how they go about the reimbursement, like if there's a pool and they kind of don't know what they're gonna get until they see how many people are in the pool, and those who kind of have maybe a guarantee of what they'll be able to apply for. There are some other things that are available, and other educators can speak up, like those scholarships that are for those critical areas. So that's another source. But yes, we and we're open to, you know, depending on the interest that comes from teachers who apply, we certainly would, just like we were responsive this year to seeing if some of the resources that we have on the other side of things, professional development, that I'll speak to in a little bit, if in the future we need to increase that pool.
I guess what I'm trying to understand is it rolled out as a competitive thing, or is it
No.
rolled
it's not
out
competitive.
as if you become a teacher in one of these schools, you will be eligible for X thousand dollars in professional development on an annual basis?
So it's not.
I'm asking in part because
Mhm.
in the, you know, in a lot of state agencies, that is how it works. We say to a person, when you're hired,
Mhm.
you'll be eligible for X thousand dollars, as long as it's in an applicable,
Mhm.
as long as you're studying a field of study that's applicable
Yeah.
to our department.
Right, so I think you're talking about maybe a marketing strategy that could actually help get this out there. We haven't had conversations about that, but that
It's about
certainly
attracting
is.
Attraction and retention.
Absolutely. So that is important, because certainly if I'm if I'm a new teacher and coming into the profession, and there's the ability for me to apply for a scholarship to get my master's degree, that might be something that lures me to the school. So perhaps one of the strategies we can have is to have a communication like this that has talking points for human resources directors to be able to use this as a marketing tool. Is that getting to what you're?
Yeah, I
asking?
mean, I understand the purpose here is to also get people,
Yeah,
get them education so
Yeah.
that they can have higher quality delivery.
yeah. There's many
Also thinking of
opportunities
the
that come with
marketing
this.
side of how do you get
Appreciate that.
retention. and
Yeah, and I'm
attraction.
making note of that.
to
We
these
can work on
schools.
that.
It's probably been more of an opportunity for folks who are already serving in these schools than it's been necessarily used as an incentive.
Well, it was
and
kind of by
recruitment
design
incentive.
last year
Yeah.
because of when it rolled out. It really couldn't be so much of a recruitment because it rolled out in the middle of the year. So we communicated in that way. But now that we're being proactive with it, we can actually have it be something that, you know, an HR director could actually slip something like this in the
Well,
resources
and
that they
ideally,
have to say.
attach it to whatever the school district allows.
And
you
that's
can
it.
Say, if you
Yes.
come to one of these schools,
You're
you're
eligible for.
gonna get a little extra
Yeah,
than
Yeah.
if you went to some other school that has less. of a
Right.
need.
and I will say, just, I mean, anecdotally, but just from our limited marketing of putting this up on like the Redding Consortium social media, and things like that, it was certainly shared. And I got some messages from folks who are not in Redding Consortium schools who were like, how do we get in on this? And the answer is to come to a Redding Consortium school.
Exactly.
So hopefully, that will spread.
I'll reach out and find out when the human resources directors are getting together. I know they have monthly meetings, so we can get on their agenda and share there. I think there's just one more slide on professional development, maybe a couple, and then I'll wrap up. Okay, so on the professional development side of things, we have decided to reserve a chunk of money for professional development. That was part of the recommendations of the educator work group. But we also decided that instead of arbitrarily coming up with some whole school professional development, that we are purposely and very strategically waiting for the Wilmington Learning Collaborative's executive director to come on board. And as a sign of collaboration and coordination of the work of Redding and the Wilmington Learning Collaborative, we will allow them to get grounded with the work, take stock of the needs, and let this be a resource that helps to support the professional development plan of the new executive director. So there will be more to come after we, see that milestone reached. And I think that'll be in the next couple of weeks if everything goes according to plan.
Yeah, there's definitely been some news.
Yes.
Awesome. Any other questions for Shelley before we move on? All right. Now it is, oh, yes, sir.
I
Yes,
think
sir. Oh, that's right.
That's why I did my questions. first.
I know, I
Make sure
know.
you got that out.
A couple things. So, one, thank you. This is wonderful and, loves money increase. This is actually been very helpful for Reading School, and I do love to say that we can market this even more.
Mhm.
Couple questions. So for the deadline is August 5th.
Yes.
Mhm.
Are the PDMS required or just suggested?
Are they required for application? They're information sessions. No, you don't have to attend the PDMS session in order to apply for the scholarship.
And will it be a later one?
You know what, we can talk about that because, with the August deadline, I'm sure that won't be a problem. Let's talk about getting a July one on the books.
Yeah, because for new staff might be coming
Yeah.
on, and the July 1 starts the new.
Yeah, that makes
fiscal year.
sense, especially with it being such a crunch time. I mean, the 6th and 8th, like we're talking about this week and everything's in a frenzy. So we can definitely talk about getting maybe even a July and maybe just something that's just before, like beginning and or middle and end of July.
Like an August.
Does that sound
1,
good?
A July,
And
If-
possibly right at the smack dab beginning of August, since there's a August 5th or something deadline.
yeah, because you have your new
Yes.
staff on and then districts in charge.
Absolutely.
Good job. Two, the, can you repeat again about if you apply, if you apply for your bachelor, you can have hopefully this funding straight through. So this will be continuous. Is that the proposal you were sharing earlier?
Yeah, we purposely organize this so that, pending this money being available, that this can be something that we can expect year after year to be in the budget.
Okay,
Yeah.
but the person's not guaranteed any more money.
Um,
Unless the Reading.
They can
fund-
apply every year
They apply
for
every
it,
year.
yeah.
Got it.
Mhm, yeah.
And then,
Every quarter or whatever it is, they can apply for it.
the eligible programs, are these the only programs now that are available?
Yes, these are the programs. Were there more programs last year than aren't showing here?
I think there were. So I know the doctorate was there
Mhm.
for education. I think right now master's is terminal on here.
Yes.
and I-
We did talk about making sure that before we bring the doctorate degree into the mix, that we actually have enough funds that are supporting teachers and master's level, as opposed to stretching that and then seeing that money eaten up so fast with doctoral programs. So that was a conversation. So that is something that's missing here.
Got it. And then is there any change to how the funding, we call it a scholarship, but it's a reimbursement. Is there any shift to doing an actual scholarship?
Like a
No,
grant
it's still
upfront.
reimbursement, so it's still set up the same way with a reimbursement type of thing. I think, let me double check, let me look at my talking points here on this, because we may have made a shift. Elena, does anything sound familiar there? Because I deviated from my notes.
You send a check straight to the school, right?
You know what, I did see something here from our notes that said something about trying to communicate in advance. Why don't we, let me look over some notes we had from the meeting and I'll get back to you, and maybe if time allows, I can announce, make a quick update on that.
I would propose, and I'll push again.
Mhm.
I think this is phenomenal. I think having a person that might not have the most funding have to apply to a bachelor's or another degree, and then find out on the end of the maybe $30,000 a year. It is hard for me to sacrifice $2,000, $3,000
Yeah.
of my entire salary after taxes and hope that I get the money back. Especially the recipients are Delaware universities, so Deltech, DSU, UD have money. Enough that if they were promised by Reading via the state, we will give you this funding.
Yes,
If this person does this, they pass it with a C or B or higher,
yeah.
earn the credit, and if they don't, then it goes back to the person. But at least there's some type of way we can lessen the financial load for the recipient, especially if it costs us nothing else.
Well, maybe there can be a way, so I'm looking at my notes and I don't think that's the case, so it's not a frontward scholarship, that's not the way we planned it right now. But listening to you talk, I can see a world where, I mean, we're tiny enough, we're talking about a handful of IHEs. Maybe if the person has a letter saying that you are awarded, that we can just have the cooperation of our financial offices at our IHEs to say, this person has a guaranteed amount that we know is coming in. That way, the new educator isn't financially strapped to put up money and then wait for reimbursement. But we did set up increased parameters to be able to make sure that we can make those awards quickly so that the payments can be issued before the end of the term. So I do see that in our notes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll make a note of that. Thank you.
Chuck, and then Kevin, and then.
I was just gonna. if I could
Immediate
add to
follow
what
on.
you said, just
Go ahead,
follow-
Secretary.
I have some experience with this
Mhm.
and it works great as long as people pass. Where it
Yeah.
falls apart is trying to
That's a
claw
good
back
point.
the money
Yes,
if somebody doesn't.
which
So,
might be why we have the system set up
Right.
the way that
So-
it is.
you know, again, I don't know if all 70 did great. then
Yeah.
This is a non-issue,
Great.
but if you have,
Guaranteed.
if you have
That
15 or
is true.
20% that don't, then you might want to think twice about it. 'Cause I
That
know-
is true.
I
yeah.
know we've had those types of scholarship programs actually with.
Yeah.
Higher ed in Delaware, and when you try to get the money back from somebody.
Is gonna be impossible. Yep.
Does it go directly to their account? It has to go to their account.
They're billed.
I don't know, some of these are starting to sound like work group
Okay,
level
so
conversation.
we can get into that a little
Chuck,
bit later.
Kevin,
Happy
do
to
you wanna-
have, thank you.
No, I was just
Okay.
saying, most personnel policies within the state, you have to spend the money and get reimbursed.
Yeah.
Some of that's codified in different areas, so I think you could have a,
And it comes out of that
Exploring.
experience of
exactly, offline conversation, to
back.
make it easier for certain folks who need to have that type of scholarship given to them.
Yeah,
That's all.
Okay.
Thank you.
awesome. Chuck,
Just,
did you
just a
wanna-
quick note to add from Hesky again.
Oh, Pulaski, right, because it wasn't currently operational, fair point. Okay, thanks very much for that. It's really been a highlight to see those scholarships come to fruition. And see people like Mr. Roberts telling us about it. So we're gonna move on to funding and governance. Representative Chakotcha, I believe, is online to talk about redistricting effort. Representative Chakotcha? Oh, there he is. Make sure he gets highlighted and unmuted and all that good stuff.
All right, good evening, everyone. Representative Chakotcha here, my coach here for our working group, Councilman Street. He's under the weather, so I will give a quick update and report. Councilman Street and I have continued to meet mainly with legislators, city, county, state legislators about our charge and how we're going to move forward in terms of just evaluating the educational landscape within the city of Wilmington. And of course, there are specific charges, ways in which we can reduce the number of school districts providing service to the city of Wilmington. We've set forth a meeting as well with the Wilmington Learning Collaborative, with their leadership, going to schedule some ongoing meetings with them. Hopefully once the executive director is established, and we'll have that all set up going forward, so we can continue to work in a collaborative effort with them, and many of our shared goals and objectives that are very similar between the two bodies. And lastly, I'll say that we are currently working on the draft for reauthorization for Redding, so that hopefully will be filed this week. That will extend our charge, and as well working with that in trying to ensure that our timelines and our goals in terms of reporting our work collaboratively with the WLC, because again, we want this to truly be not been done in collaboration with them, and not something that's being viewed as an opposing group, but two groups working toward the same mission and working collaboratively. So our timelines, we want to very closely align with theirs in our reauthorization. Again, hopefully to have that established this week, and looking forward to just continuing this work, this really needed work. The foundation work is more, we think about the issues that brought us all together for Redding. It really stemmed from some of these core issues that are still here, and just trying to figure out ways in which to improve the educational outcomes for our children. We believe that begins with true partnerships with our districts, as well as our elected officials on every level.
Thank you, Representative. Do we have any questions or comments for Representative Chakotay? Great, thank you. I will just say I appreciate your persistence. You know, we've been at this for some time and many others have been at this much longer, but we've had some setbacks, whether it was the pandemic and then, you know, getting grounded in our alignment with the WLC. But important to know that we are still keeping this as part of our work, and the reauthorization legislation obviously is part of that. And the next action step that we'll be looking for. So thank you. Moving on to last but certainly not least, our social determinants work group. So we have Jeff and Ray here to talk about some things that are coming out of that work group right now.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Over the past several years, the social determinants are working. We have been very focused and steeped in understanding and making recommendations around early care and K-5 education. Is now time and the equity dashboard. Now it's past time for us to really take a look at expanding our work to look at the needs for support services for middle and high school students. And so we of course, want to do so carefully and thoughtfully. So we will be working over the summer and into the fall to develop a plan that will really be driven by the members of the work group and other people that are going to join us, Ms. Ellis and others that are working in the space of middle and secondary education every day. So we're proposing a two-step approach to creating this comprehensive planning. The short-term phase, and you'll see it in the proposed funding plan, is to utilize existing resources to support the Boost Initiative, which is a cross-district collaboration, all focusing on improving high school graduation success rates for Wilmington students.
And then long-term for that, we, at our last work group meeting, we discussed creating a subgroup of this committee and others to talk about what are some other things to begin to look at to sustain long-term improvement in high school graduation rates of students who reside in the city of Wilmington. So we're going to begin compiling that group and try to hit the ground running in the fall. So we're planning some summer meetings to kind of share some resources, share some ideas, and come forward with other recommendations. So I think right now, the group did meet and approved the following item up there, to approve the use of funds for the Redding Consortium budget allocated for wraparound services to support high school students in the city of Wilmington through the Boost Initiative for the next 3 years. And that was voted on and approved unanimously by the work group.
Okay, great. Wonderful. All right, all good. Any questions for social determinants?
I was just wanted to ask, I didn't hear, what did you say you were gonna do next using this group?
So we're gonna, reaching out to the members of the work group to see who has an affinity for the secondary space, because we have been so steeped in early childhood and K-5. So I'm gonna be reaching out to all the work group members to see if anyone would like to come together this summer to talk about how we can replicate this wraparound service support for secondary students moving forward, to kind of build the groundwork from the work group, and then also ask if they have any friends or colleagues or folks who are in this space that might want to be a part of it. We have a member of the public who regularly attends meetings that who's expressed an interest in involvement. We're gonna, try to start talking about secondary, similar to the way we did when we first started our work group in July 20.
Thanks.
A little bit of a grassroots movement conversation.
Talk with students and parents as well.
Yeah. It's a good refresh. Kevin?
Jeff, I'm sorry to get back to you, but what high schools are in the Boost program?
So right now, any student, it's not high schools. Because that's the thing that we're trying to dismantle. Instead of 5 or 4 districts working with their students in silos and saying we have all these high schools, we have students who all are students. They reside in the city of Wilmington, and the services are being provided to them based on the fact of where they live. So they could go to early college, they could go to Hudson, St. George's, Howard, William Penn, AI, Dickinson, McKean, doesn't matter. They are anywhere where they go to school. That's the school that we have been, that's the approach we've been taking for the last 2 years. Looking at it from a geographic problem of challenge as opposed to every district's gonna work their students only. Don't worry about it. We got ours, you get yours. We're breaking down that paradigm.
That's fine. And what was the graduation rate for the last?
So when we started this with Boost 22, it was focused solely on rising juniors into their senior year. We had a targeted goal of like 90, we were going for 90 some odd percent. I believe at the end of the day, when summer numbers landed, we were close to 88 or 89% grad rate of the students who resided in the city of Wilmington that are in the 4 districts in Newcastle County, VOTEC, as well as early college. That was just those seniors, but from that, we learned that seniors is too late because some of them are 18, and for the services that we were providing, parent consent was part. So when you have parent consent, you can get a little bit more oomph behind it. Try to tell an 18-year-old what to do, just on a good day, let alone someone who's disenfranchised at school and also working, doing the things that they're doing. It was hit or miss. So Boost 20 this year, it's Boost 26, which means we're focused on first-time 9th graders. So 661-ish students who reside in the city of Wilmington are first-time 9th graders in Colonial, Brandywine, Christina, Red Clay, and Newcastle County VOTEC. Those are where the Boost efforts have been. And if we can get them to 10th grade, that's like a pretty doggone fair going conclusion. They're going to graduate. You can get them to 10th grade on top. That's the approach where we're at right now.
Exciting. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, that's our segue, because we did talk about that motion, or it was the motion, the kind of resolution, I guess, coming up from the work group for us to incorporate funding for Boost into our spending plan. So that's our cue to talk about our spending plan. So you may remember, as a consortium, we were required by language in the state budget epilogue that we submit a spending plan for the way that we use the state funds that sort of come through Redding for our priorities. That spending plan has to be approved by the Office of Management and Budget, the Controller General's Office, and the chairs of the Joint Finance Committee. So spending plans in prior years here closely track cost estimates that were approved by the Redding Consortium and its original spending recommendations made to the Governor and General Assembly. This year's spending plan is slightly different for a few reasons. First, it does involve the expenditure of both operating funds expected to be approved in the state's fiscal year 24 budget and unspent funds that were appropriated in prior state budgets. So a combination of those funds. And second, it does involve expenditures in a new category, as has just been discussed, the middle school, high school, outside school time that was not included in the consortium's initial set of recommendations. However, we know that did come up when we surveyed our interests as a consortium of direction that we wanted to go. And as we know, this addition was recommended by social determinants. And finally, what our spending plan also does is it ratifies expansions in 2 categories, scholarships and professional development, recommended by the consortium in its original recommendations, but that are now being supported at higher levels than originally recommended. So similar to before, but some tweaks. So and the vast majority of unspent funds are in 3 categories: pre-K slots, professional development, and the data dashboard. The unspent funds in the pre-K space are a result of a relatively smaller number of providers applying for those funds in the first year that they were made available, and the delayed solicitation of additional providers in order to synchronize applications between Redding and the state's broader ECAP program. So we didn't see disbursement, happening for a period of time. And also the number of recipients of Redding pre-K slots is now at a level where there is no expectation of carryover funds that would exist. Just a note there. So as what you see now is our recommendation from Matt and I for the spending of our operating funds and carryover funds. And we will have some additional notes perhaps in subsequent meetings for potential addendum to this, but I think this is what we have at the moment. Matt, did I miss anything? Would you like to walk us through the specifics?
No,
Oh, come on. My mouth.
I mean, I'd be happy to, but I think everybody had a
Everyone
chance
can
to
read.
see them beforehand.
Okay.
One correction or amendment that I hope we can make is there, you'll see on the first page, there's a request that the consortium also sort of approve in advance, moving $200,000 in carryover
Right.
funds down the road if the social determinants work group comes back to us with a recommendation to do that. And I was gonna suggest that we make that number 400 rather than 200. The reason being that in our original two spending plans, we had made an allocation to DHSS for home visitation programs. I don't think there's ever been any expectation that it was gonna be ongoing or continuing, but we haven't been able to hear back from them yet as to whether sort of what's being done with that money. And I think it would be good for us to make sure that there's not gonna be any kid that's midstream in a program or a program that's midstream that gets cut off abruptly, inadvertently by us. So I don't think that's the case, but if we were able to make that number 400 rather than 200, that would give us the ability to circle back and make sure that there's not any unanticipated disruption. And if there is, to move one-time funds if we needed to.
Okay,
And I apologize, that's my mistake.
no problem. Thank you for the edit. Any questions? Oh, boy, Chuck. And so then Kevin.
And you've heard this one before, that I just wanted to put it out there again, as far as the implementation of this, the selection of projects, the method that is used and to figure out who's getting how much and for what. I know that it's been problematic over the last couple of years. It's been like schools have been kind of gone through a process where they're kind of like vendors rather than partners. And I'm not trying to, throw stones or anything at anybody, but I just hope that as we go forward, that we refine our processes so that we can have more of a meaningful back and forth to collaboratively design programs and select them in a more meaningful way than rather than just a very sanitary RFP process. So that's just a comment. The other one is number 5, the professional development, $1.6 million.
Yes.
Having been a CFO in school districts for a long time, I know that can look all kinds of different ways. So I just want us, as we select those projects, we're not just going for the shiny program that's the one and done, come and
Yeah.
the $10,000 a day. I wrote a book, you bring a box of books and you pass them out, and you give a nice little lecture or whatever. It's got to be really meaningful stuff, and it's got to include everything, even if it's after school, some pay for the people who are attending. That one's one that looks like it could be just a nebulous anything. So I just ask us to be very deliberate in what we select for that portion right there. It's a lot of money for things that could look lots of different things.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
No, that's really helpful.
We did talk about that when we talked about the PD funds, to make sure that, from the front end, it's based on needs, that we can show that. And then on the back end, even that the plan, that's why we emphasize that it would be supporting the plan of the executive director. And that plan would include even the impact of that professional development. So everything from the quality experience aligned to needs, but then also making sure that we can show the impact of that professional development on practice and students.
Thank you. I love what I'm hearing.
And I feel like we're hearing a lot of interesting things in our school visits and the professional development, a lot of different things being done in different schools, that can be drawn on as well. So Kevin, sorry.
So I gotta put my budget hat on for a second. We have a budget next year. It's about 1.5 million or 1.6. 6 million of that is carryover money. So there's one-time money. We're building a budget next year on carryover money. So we have to be very careful when we're, like, just example, outside health services, which is 5.7 and another 2 million. So we have an $8 million budget that going forward in 25 is going to have to get absorbed with another $2 million from somewhere to sustain that. Otherwise, we're going to be back trying to reduce programs that were started. I get the data dashboard, it needs 1.4 million in one-time monies. That's fine, and maybe professional development. But again, we're putting 1.6 million on the table, and I'm trying to be looking at that. Dr. Woods and everybody else in this room, what's gonna happen the following year, where we're going to be. So I think it's just a concern I have about the carry, a lot of that carry, I'll go back to you, Chuck, was. I gotta be careful. I have a filter here for a second, but it was extremely difficult to spend the money. It was extremely difficult to get the money out to people who needed it through the process of the, just the funnel hole with DOE at times, but we've got to make that better, so we're getting money out on the doors, that's all. The one question I had is just real true, the pre-K slots, how many slots do we fund with the 3.7 million?
How many slots was?
I don't need an answer today, I mean, somebody can come back.
We
How many-
have it.
Yeah,
somewhere.
how many slots are we actually funding? And then within the outside help, I think there was something in the budget description that said
120.
there would be 3 new 3-year programs and continue expansion of the total 3-year programs and 2 existing programs in Newcastle. So for that, are we bringing on new services within that program?
Matt's nodding.
Yes.
Yeah, and actually, I think the answer to that question may answer your initial concern also. So the reason that the funds are divided up that way, the $5,740,000 is for the first year of what is anticipated, what is hopefully, since we don't write the RFP or award the RFP, but the intention is that that would be sufficient to fund 3 schools to do new programs that currently are not offering outside school time programs. So that would be for 3 schools that are not currently receiving outside school time grants through Redding. The 2.174 in carryover funds is targeted at schools that are already receiving Redding funds, but because of a miscommunication about how the RFPs had initially been intended to go out, were led to think that they could not apply for as substantial a grant as we had intended for them to be able to. So the goal with that 2.1 million is for schools that are currently receiving Redding funds for outside school time programs to be able to add on to that and to essentially equalize them with the 3 schools, with the 3 new schools that would be applying. So that's, again, we don't ultimately control what the RFPs say, and the budget epilogue is not that explicit. But that's our intention in designing it that way. And that's why hopefully that addresses your concern about not relying over the long term on one-time funds. The one-time funds would be in fact one time to try to equalize the schools that were already getting funded.
This one more is probably more philosophical. Has there ever been any discussion that, you know, outside school time services not be necessarily in a school, but in a community center or a nonprofit agency?
Yes.
Probably what you just said, Matt. So the 2.174 is only expected for this upcoming year due to a glitch in the matrix.
That's
Or is
that
that
is
ongoing?
that's part of money that carried. Here's the challenge that 2.1 is one-time money. So the challenge that we had this year is that we actually were recommended for less money than the prior year in the governor's recommended budget. The operating fund recommendation was the same, but the prior year, we had also been recommended for some one-time funds that weren't included this year. So for this, we are working with less total money. We're also trying to add in a heightened level of funding for the scholarship program and add on the middle school and high school program, both of which we very much want to do. And then we have these carryover funds that we had for the reasons that Senator Lockman outlined. And we don't want to keep carrying money over because we actually have things that we want to fund. And also, if we don't spend the money, then that sends a bad message to our legislators, which, you know, that we don't need the money, which is not the case. So the challenge with this is trying to fit in what needs to be operating funds and what can be funded with carryover funds. And so that's how those splits come out.
This was, so that explains, this used to be 2.4 million past year's budget, correct? I thought it was 2.4 for 3 schools. So the proposed funding was actually higher, 2.9.
Right.
now.
I think that was well, it has never been written into the epilogue what it had to be. I think that in the RFPs that went out, schools were allowed to apply for up to 2.4.
And that was 1.9
per year. Yeah, so it's
Per
1.
year?
Yes. Yeah, so this,
Because this is an
so
annual
the
amount.
goal is, and this has been the difficulty, is, we really want schools to submit very ambitious proposals that have a lot going on before school, after school, summer, student health center. So that's, so it's 1.9 million per year for 3 schools, and then this number would be in the operating budget for 3 consecutive years, so the schools would be funded.
At 1.9, so
Consecutive years.
$5.7 million.
Right, I think it comes up to 1.8 something, pretty close to 1.9, yeah. There's not a requirement, again, in the epilogue language that the department allocate it that way. They could fund 4 schools at a lesser amount, but our goal is for them to fund 3 schools and have them be, very ambitious programs that encompass everything we want them to encompass. And this 2.1 million would allow those schools that are currently receiving the Redding funds to do more than what they're currently doing.
Yes. They came in a little lower, yeah. Great, so are there any other questions? So this is the spending plan, and that, thank you for talking through all that went into that. So with that one edit of the possibility of reallocating, we would make it 400,000 instead of 200,000, that is the plan. So love to have a motion that we approve this plan.
Kevin, so moved.
Okay. Got a motion by Kevin Kelly, would love a second.
Second.
Second by Margie Lopez Wait. So we'll do, is show of hands okay, Kelly? Bailey? I can read or show of hands. Why don't we do a roll call, just to make sure we get everybody, make sure we know who's here and that we have quorum. Okay. All right, roll call. Aaron Batt.
Yay.
Christina Rivera.
Yay.
Chuck Longfellow for Superintendent Shelton.
Yes.
J.J. Woods.
Present.
Yes. Yes, sorry, or if that's what you were. Not need to read you. Sue, Brummel for Superintendent Green,
Yay.
Senator Buxton,
Yes.
Superintendent Menzer,
Yes.
Jennifer Tompkins,
Yes.
Dawn Sokolowski for Superintendent Jones,
Yes.
Kevin Kelly,
Yes.
Superintendent Fuller,
Yes.
Margie Lopez Wait,
Yes.
Maria Matos,
Abstain.
Matt Den,
Yes.
Representative Kukocha,
Yes.
Noel Katara,
Yes.
Rachel Avery,
Yes.
Tika Hartsock,
Yes.
Senator Lockman. Yes. Xavier Mills. Okay, sounded like a yes, great. All right, thank you everyone for going through that with us, and of course, we'll continue to be open for questions, and we'll offer updates as we go forward. At this time, the bulk of our agenda is over, but we're gonna offer a few moments for a special update from one of our members, Bettina. Go ahead. You wanted to give us an update about some recent and upcoming events for the Vision Coalition of Delaware Education.
Thanks so much, Senator. Hear me all right?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Terrific. Well, it's great to be on, and thanks for providing me with a couple of minutes at the end. I want to speak as the chair of the Vision Coalition. As most of you know, it's a public-private partnership that developed the Vision 2015 and then Student Success 2025. And right now we are really working on how we can add to the conversation and support and preparedness of the community as the state works through the analysis and recommendations around school funding, which are due around the end of the year, maybe the start of 2024. You can correct me, Senator Lockman, if I'm not correct on that, but that's what I recall. We had an excellent session on equity in education and kind of funding basics on March 17th. And thanks to Senator Lockman for joining us at that. where we really learned and shared with about 140 or so community members the essentials of current funding, how schools are funded in Delaware, how they're funded in other locales, some of the core elements with respect to what's important when you to think about as far as funding. We will have a second session in that series on equity and education funding on June 12th at 1 o'clock. It's called Money Matters, and we'll discuss the impact of increased school funding on student success and on advancement of students and how it can really make an impact when you have more equitable funding, how to allocate those funds for success and for maximum impact. We'll be joined there by our esteemed Shelley Rouser, who we've heard a lot about tonight, who is, as you all know, incredibly talented and knowledgeable, as well as Julian LaFortune. I don't know quite how to pronounce his name, but he is with the Public Policy Institute at UC Berkeley, and I'll be participating as well. So that's at 1 o'clock on June 12th. I believe Madeline is there and can add any additional details as needed. I can see you behind Matt Den there, Madeline. So
Right. You got it. We'll make sure everybody has the link. Yeah, thank you.
So really, we had terrific engagement. We had students at the last session. Let's just be like, we want to make sure that people have an opportunity to educate themselves so that we'll have some context when the recommendations come out, and to be well informed to provide feedback and comments. So thanks so much. Thanks so much to the chairs, and appreciate the couple minutes that you've provided.
Thanks, Bettina. It sounds like a great program. And I think if we have the slides have been sent around by email, but link is in there as well. And I'm sure we'll remind folks about that in the coming days, because next Monday. All right, I think having closed the agenda, we do have some time for public comments. We will see. I don't know if we have anyone in the room who would like to offer public comment. Oh, we do. We have at least one.